This is Good Morning Indiana, working for you.
Overnight, rowdy bar crowds keeping Metro Police busy, where a man was stabbed in the early morning hours and the fights that shut down a popular stretch of nightlife.
Plus, the search for a missing Delphi boy swept away in a creek continues this morning. Why officials do not want volunteers to show up and get in the water to help.
Simon Pagenaud sweeps him up the May and wins his maiden Indy 500.
And a dream come true for Simon Pagenaud, the French driver battling Alexander Rossi in the final laps, but kissing the brakes after winning his first Indy 500. How fans felt about the race results just ahead. But first, we want to thank you for waking up and watching Good Morning Indiana. I'm Meredith Barrett.
And I'm Nicole Griffin. Meteorologist Todd Clausen standing by. Todd, today's a day that a lot of people are going to be outside, but you really say they need to be weather aware today.
Yeah, you know, especially the further we get throughout the day. We're fine here throughout the morning hours, probably the early afternoon, but then we run into the storm risk later on this afternoon, and it's kind of a 1-2 threat with storms. First, just some isolated storms, then probably after sunset, a little better chance of a big cluster of storms coming through. But here's the view this morning as we get going on this 6 o'clock hour of Good Morning Indiana. You know, some high thin clouds out there. Now the sun's getting above the horizon. We'll start to burn some of that cloud cover off. And if you look really closely here off to the north, you see a little bit of patchy fog that is out there as well. That too will burn off quickly now that the sun is coming up over the horizon. 63 in Bedford right now, 64 in Indy. 50s though to the north. It's kind of a cooler, comfortable morning in northern locales as these high thin clouds make their way through the area. So what we have is a warm front to our south. That'll lift through with the isolated storm threat, and then this cluster of storms comes through potentially later on this evening. With that said, all the storms are initially very, very spotty, so there's no need to cancel your outdoor plans if you do have them on this Memorial Day. But as the storm threat builds later on this afternoon, if you do hear some thunder, make sure you go indoors. Otherwise, 77 degrees already by the noon hour, on our way up to a high temperature of 84 degrees. I'll talk about the enhanced risk for severe weather in northern locations for you coming up in just a few minutes.
Todd, thank you. Breaking overnight, Metro Police dealing with some rowdy crowds out for the long weekend.
That included a person who was stabbed at a Northeast Side bar. Just after 2 a.m., officers were called to the Point Restaurant and Lounge near 34th and Arlington. Officials say it was tough to get inside because of such a large crowd. Eventually, a man was found with very minor injuries as a result of the stabbing. No suspect information or a motive has been released, but officers say they did find drugs at the scene.
And in Broad Ripple, a large fight shut down parts of Broad Ripple Avenue and prompted dozens of police officers to patrol the street. Police at the scene tell us the officers were called out around midnight because of the large crowds that were in the area. Officials say there were several fights and a couple of arrests, but so far no specific details have been released.
Oh my gosh, I mean, Alexander Rossi had it, Simon came back and took it. Oh my gosh, fantastic finish.
Race day living up to the hype with the 103rd Indy 500 coming down to the final lap.
Simon Pagenaud swept the month of May, crossing the bricks first just weeks after his Grand Prix win. The 35-year-old French driver swapped leads with Alexander Rossi 5 times in the closing laps, but sailed past him on turn 3 during lap 199. Pagenaud says the win is a dream come true, and fans we talked to say while the ending was exciting, the weather was the best part of the day.
When I found out I was pregnant, I was so scared about the weather this year because it's always 100 degrees. And then I was like, oh, it's going to be rainy and cold, and ended up being 80, but it's fine. I'm glad it wasn't 100 degrees, and I made it through the race.
It feels like winning the lottery, but more than that, because this was a dream as a kid.
Today, the celebrations continue. Pagenaud will be back at the track to take the traditional winners' pictures at the Yard of Bricks, and then he will speak at a winners' press conference. We will have all of that coming up later today on the news at noon. For a full look at all the sights and sounds from the Indy 500, you can head to the IndyChannel.com or the RTV6 app. There you can find a live blog from IMS, as well as photo galleries from the snake pit, around the track, and along the red carpet. After the race was over, thousands of fans left the track with lots of new memories.
But they also left behind a lot of trash. And our Elena Martella is live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where a massive cleanup will be underway today. Elena, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, guys. So it's a dirty job, pun intended, but somebody's got to do it. So let's take a look at some of these items that we have here. So we've got a pizza box. We've got some beer cans here. Undoubtedly, there's going to be a lot of other items out in the field. Take a look at this massive cleanup effort that's going to be needed here at the Snake Pit. A lot of trash heading out there. Many of those volunteers who do take part are with local nonprofit organizations. So let's take a look at this video from last year's cleanup. Undoubtedly, there are going to be those beer cans like I just showed you, those food wrappers and more, but crews will also find some hidden treasures. So years past have seen furniture, money. One of our photographers, Shay Goodpaster, actually tells me one year he saw a row of porta potties burned to a crisp. And last year, IMPD Chief Roach volunteered and said not only is it about helping out, but it's about togetherness.
Spend some time together as a community with church membership and engage each other. Eat some donuts in the morning and have lunch afterwards.
But not all of it is done by hand. You can see here in this video, there's a trash machine that picks up anything in its path. So that helps to speed the process up a tad. So you can see it's pretty quiet now, but those volunteers that will be coming, they actually get a donation from IMS for their service. So it's win-win for all involved. For now, I'll send things back to you guys in the studio.
Elena, thank you. Now to some headlines we've been following all weekend. Today, crews will continue to search for a Delphi boy who went missing while swimming in a creek last week. 4-year-old Owen Jones was last seen on Thursday before he was reportedly swept down Deer Creek. Drones, boats, and sonar equipment have been used in the search, but officials say high water levels and muddy water have made conditions difficult. This morning, crews are discouraging volunteers from showing up to help search. They say the conditions along the water are not safe and only professionals will keep searching.
State police are asking for your help as they investigate a hit-and-run crash that killed a motorcycle rider over the weekend. Troopers say just after 2 a.m. on Saturday morning, a hit-and-run crash happened along I-70 westbound at mile marker 77. That's near the Holt Road exit. One of the drivers stopped and called 911 and said the other car involved had taken off. While that driver was waiting, 27-year-old Kayla Gullett slammed into the back of the car on her motorcycle. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Troopers say they have little information about the first car involved that fled. If you know anything, give state police a call.
This week, a Muncie man will be back in court facing new charges for a deadly shooting at a house party near Ball State's campus. Right now, 19-year-old Vashon Harnett is facing attempted murder charges. He told police he shot and injured a 20-year-old because of a family fight on May 18th. 7 people in total were shot, and 2 days after the shooting, a 17-year-old died. So far, Harnett has not been charged in the teen's death. He is scheduled to be back before a judge on Wednesday. Prosecutors say more charges are possible in the case. Today, residents all across Indianapolis will host ceremonies to remember those who laid down their lives for our country and our freedom.
Memorial Day ceremonies are planned at several central Indiana locations. One service will happen at the Hoosier Patriot Memorial Grounds of Washington Park East Cemetery. Music begins at 9:30 this morning, while the ceremony starts at 10 a.m. Also at 10 a.m., the city of Fishers will honor servicemen and women in a Memorial Day ceremony at Liberty Plaza along the Central Green. And this afternoon, one of the longest running Memorial Day traditions will happen. The 151st annual Memorial Day ceremony gets underway at the Crown Hill National Cemetery at 2 p.m.
Many will use the holiday to hit the pools. Indy Parks has opened 4 pools for the Memorial Day weekend. If you want to swim, you can head to Broad Ripple Park, Ellenberger Park, Northwest Way Park, and Perry Park today. The next wave of Indianapolis City pools will open on June 8th once most schools are out for summer vacation. All right, Todd, even though we do have some storm threats today, people should be able to take a bit of a dip.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of dry hours throughout the day today. So when I talk about the storm and the storm threat, it's my job to prepare you and let you know that there will be the potential for storms, especially the further north you go. You notice the risk is enhanced from Lafayette to Muncie and points to the north. So mainly the northern third of central Indiana has the biggest threat or the best threat of seeing severe weather. It drops off to a slight risk just north of Indianapolis, then marginal from Indy down towards Bloomington. But all forms of severe weather will be on the table. I think it's mainly some wind and hail in these storms. As far as the tornado threat, I think that's probably closer to the front, which will be right along along the Indiana-Michigan state line. So keep that in mind if you're traveling into some of those northern lakes here for the day today. The timing is between 3 p.m. and 3 a.m. I know that's a big window for you, but what's going to happen today? 2 clusters coming through. First, the warm front will arrive, and that just brings an isolated storm threat this afternoon. That's why I say carry on with your plans. Just know that the threat is potentially there. Temperatures quickly get up into the 80s, and here we are. It's just an isolated storm throughout the afternoon and into the evening hours. It's here in northern Indiana as we head into the late evening, overnight hours that the stronger storms come through. So from Lafayette up to Monticello, Delphi, Kokomo, even over towards Hartford City and Marion, you have the potential of the strongest storms. And again, it's late tonight into the overnight hours, so make sure you join Kevin tonight. And that's where we have the best potential of maybe seeing 1 or 2 of those tornadoes here to roll through later on this afternoon and this evening. We'll talk more about this storm threat and the rest of your work week coming up in just a few minutes.
Todd, thank you. Move aside, Indy 500. It is time for the next big sporting event, the Scripps National Spelling Bee. We'll take a look at the Indiana students looking to take home the trophy after the break.
Plus, the tech company looking to hire and close a major employment barrier, how they're helping workers with side issues land high-paying jobs. Scientific jobs next in Hiring Hoosiers.
Meat Lover Slam is here. See you at Denny's.
Hundreds of students are waking up in Washington, D.C. this morning, getting ready to SPELL.
The Scripps National Spelling Bee gets underway today. 8 months ago, 11 million spellers started competing for a spot in the bee, but only 565 students made it there. Today, the kids will take preliminary exams. Those test results will help determine who makes it to the final rounds that you see on TV.
And here's a look at this year's contestants from Indiana. The 16 students come from all over the state, including some from here in central Indiana. We'll be keeping in touch with them throughout the week, and we'll bring you updates on their spelling as the competition gets underway. This week in our Hiring Hoosiers series aimed at connecting you to open job opportunities and training, we're revisiting our stories focused on technology. One company, Indianapolis-based Curano, is expanding rapidly with 100 software positions to fill.
Company leaders say there is tremendous growth potential for their employees. Amanda Starantino shows us how this growing tech company is a path to employment you might want to consider.
I sort of have an engineering mind. That's sort of just how my brain works.
Recently promoted Morgan Bosshart is a software engineer at Curano, a communications workflow software company based in Indianapolis. Her job in tech comes as a second career.
It took me several years in the veterinary field to realize I needed a change.
With a veterinary degree, Morgan took a software boot camp that helped her get an internship here at Curano. That internship turned into a job. The Indy company is hiring, and Morgan says it's a great opportunity for those who want a challenge.
Even though I've been here 2 years and I've been in our code base for that long, and yeah, I still feel like I'm finding new things and learning new tricks and whatever to get things done well.
And we're not talking about entry-level job salaries here. These jobs can start at $65,000, and the sky's the limit in financial growth and career growth at this company.
I think it's all about career growth. It's about sewing into people and helping them go from where they are today to where they want to be.
Josh Ross, the CEO of Curano, started this company just 1 year ago. And with expansion plans, he needs people to fill 100 positions in the next 3 years.
I think software is the future. Indiana's done a phenomenal job of really cultivating relationships and helping people with educational activities to grow towards software. And so, trying to get a role and a career and get that built up and to earn good wages, it's a great place to be.
The company's mission statement is to believe in people and help people. That includes their employees.
We believe that we're changing the world through communications. And so by this process of optimizing communications through the Curano software, we believe we have a leg up on competitors. We also believe we pay exceptional wages here and really provide a good environment that cultivates the growth of an individual.
A vast majority of the current openings at Curano are for various types of computer engineers, as well as roles in the administrative, customer care, and marketing.
The majority of the jobs that are being added are tech heavy, but they say they always need other workers to help make the business run.
To check out all the available positions at Curano and to apply, head to hiringhoosiers.com. That's also where you can find all of our other Hiring Hoosiers stories. Tomorrow on RTV6, the scientific company ignoring blind spots Wisconsin hiring Hoosiers to high-paying jobs. How they are working to close an employment barrier. That's tomorrow on Good Morning Indiana at 6 a.m. It is 6:17. Let's get over to Todd.
All right, as you walk out the door here this morning, if you're getting out and about, temperatures are very comfortable. For those of you that have to take to the roads, there's just a little bit of patchy fog in 2 isolated spots. Lafayette down to 3/4 of a mile visibility. Muncie down to a 1/4 mile. The fog should burn off pretty quickly here now that the sun is getting higher above the horizon. And here is the view of this Monday morning from downtown off towards the north, and just a few fair weather clouds out there. Should be a beautiful start to our Memorial Day, and the morning hours here will be completely dry. That is the good news. 64 degrees right now, just a light wind. Very, very comfortable anywhere you go. Temperatures to the north slightly cooler in the 50s up in the Lafayette area, as well as Crawfordsville and Tipton, compared to 61 in Bloomington. Bedford, you're currently at 62 degrees. So overall, it's a day that features a good amount of sunshine throughout the morning hours, but we do have to be aware of some isolated storms that are going to pop up later on this afternoon, and that's why it is a Storm Team 6 alert day to at least alert you to the potential. I know a lot of people have outdoor activities planned throughout the day today, and you do need to stay weather aware. So it's not going to be a widespread severe weather threat here this afternoon and early this evening. It's just more of an isolated threat with these storms that'll flare up during the peak heating of the day as a warm front works its way through the area. So here are the high thin clouds that we have right now, but the completely dry conditions. And then we have a cluster of storms off to our west. This cluster comes through probably after sunset. So it's almost 2 rounds of potentially rough weather here later on. The first is when the warm front goes through this afternoon, and then it's when that cluster of storms arrives later on today. So here's how it plays out hour by hour on TrueCast. Again, if you do have plans by 11 o'clock, we're still dealing with partly cloudy skies. By the time we get to 1:30, we're still dealing with partly cloudy skies. Should remain dry. It's once we start to get into that 3-4 o'clock hour, just these isolated storms will start to flare up across the area. The coverage is probably only about 20% of you maybe see an isolated storm. Most of you remain completely dry, but then closer to sunset here, this is when that cluster of storms starts to roll through what we think is going to be northern Indiana. And this is what has the best potential of bringing the severe weather through the area. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on late this afternoon, and then watch it as it develops and comes through during the evening hours. But for most of you, that's probably after you get done with your barbecues, after you come in from the pools or the lakes here across central Indiana. So the severe threat is enhanced from Muncie to Lafayette and points to the north. Indianapolis, kind of right on the border of the marginal and slight risk. Richmond, slight risk, and then no threat down to the south. So what can you expect? Well, all forms of severe weather will be on the table. Wind and hail, probably the 2 largest threats that we have, but can't rule out an isolated tornado. Not so much with those isolated storms this afternoon, but with that cluster that could come through at sunset and then into the late evening hours. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. And then tomorrow, the warm front is well to our north, and that keeps us mainly dry until late in the day. A storm chance enters the forecast, but temperatures tomorrow will be in the mid to upper 80s once again. So today and tomorrow will be the warmest days of the week, and then we get back closer to seasonable levels. Our normal high is 76. That's where we are on Thursday and Friday. As we head into Friday, the storm threat is early in the morning, and then very isolated threat on Saturday.
Todd, thank you. Now to some big national stories this morning. Overnight, President Trump and the First Lady continued their 4-day visit with the Japanese Prime Minister and his wife.
The trip coming at a time with the president is dealing with international tensions in Iran and North Korea. President Trump and the First Lady were welcomed in a lavish ceremony over the weekend, followed by a sumo wrestling event. After a round of golf, the president and Japanese Prime Minister got to work, sitting down for formal talks. Those talks focused on the issues of trade, security, and North Korea's nuclear threat.
This morning, a log ride at a California water park is still closed after 3 people were injured over the weekend. Officials say the water pumps on the ride malfunctioned and caused the log to travel faster than normal, flip, and throw riders into the water. One passenger that was injured is being treated for critical injuries. The park is still open, but again, the ride is closed as the investigation continues. In the south, floodwaters continue to rise across the state of Arkansas. This morning, river levels are sitting just below record-breaking flooding that hit the state back in 1945. The flooding is the worst along the Arkansas-Oklahoma border, where hundreds of homes are now being threatened to flood. Still ahead, the tiny Indy 500 fans taking in their first race, while you may recognize this little guy after the break.
Plus, the celebrities walking the red carpet before the Indy 500, who the fans were dying to get a selfie with or an autograph from. That's coming up. There were some first-time fans catching all the Indy 500 action this weekend, and they included Lauren Casey's new baby, Archie. She posted these pictures on her Facebook page, enjoying the Memorial Day weekend with Archie and his Can't Catch Me racing onesie. Little Archie just turned 6 weeks old, so he may have to wait a few more years until he remembers much of the race.
And lots of fans at IMS crowded along the red carpet, hoping to catch a selfie or autograph from our very own Todd Clausen. The celebrities at the race. Pacers star Domantas Sabonis was there along with Matt Damon, who waved the green flag to start the race. Christian Bale was also on hand. Former Denver Broncos running back Terrell Davis also walked the carpet, and Bachelor Nation favorite Jordan Kimball was in town. But back to TD. He has some fond memories of Indy.
My last game ever that I had my cleats on and played in a full game was right here at the old RCA Dome. This was before Lucas Oil Stadium.
Right. Tell us a little about...
All right, Todd, so you got to meet a lot of cool celebs. Who was your favorite?
Well, I grew up loving Terrell Davis when he was on the Broncos. This kid here, he was pretty funny. He was Georgie from the remake of It. Oh. And so he was hilarious on the red carpet. I was like, do you always do scary movies and shows? He's like, so far, yeah. And then they didn't show it there, but he just stares into the camera like that. It was pretty creepy.
Oh,
it was pretty creepy,
good little actor there.
How many people did you have to interview?
Well, we couldn't get all of them. Christian Bale, Matt Damon, they didn't do any interviews. They just kind of walked, but it was probably 8 or 9.
Oh, nice.
So Jim Corneliuson we interviewed, Terrell Davis, Jordan Kimball, Jackson, I forget his name, the little kid, Walk the Moon singer. So there was a bunch of them out there. I think we'll get them up online here at some point this week. All right, outside right now, we're dealing with temperatures in the 50s and 60s. Beautiful start to our Memorial Day here across the area. As we get into the afternoon and evening hours, we'll build in some spotty storms. Temperatures today nice and warm, back up into the 80s. There is the threat of severe weather this afternoon and this evening. The further north you are from Indianapolis, the greater that threat is.
All right, Todd, thank you. Still ahead, the push for school safety 1 year since the shooting at Noblesville West Middle School. The changes Central Indiana schools are still making as they work to keep your kids safe.
Plus, we are live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway with a look at the Indy 500 aftermath. Who IMS will bring in to help clean up all this trash coming up.
350 Rallies and Checkers. Best foodies know the deal.
This is Good Morning Indiana, working for you.
Now at 6:30, several large finds keeping police busy overnight. New this morning what police found inside the bar where someone was stabbed.
The greatest spectacle in racing is now in the books. We'll show you why yesterday's Indy 500 thrilling finish made history.
The race is over and the trash is left behind. A live report coming up on the massive cleanup that will leave the speedway sparkling over the next few hours. Thanks for joining us this morning on Good Morning Indiana. I'm Nicole Griffin.
And I'm Meredith Barrick. Todd Clausen here with us, letting us know what we can expect for our Memorial Day.
Yeah, it is a Storm Team 6 alert day, and we're in alert mode because there's the potential of some thunderstorms later on this afternoon and this evening. But this morning, beautiful outside. Take a look at this shot from downtown to the north. Just some high, thin clouds out there. And that is just about it across the area. So you can carry on with any plans you do have this morning. You are completely fine. And temperatures are very, very comfortable. We're in the 50s and 60s anywhere you go. 61 in Bloomington, 64 in Indy right now. Even some upper 50s here in northern locations. So the clouds on the satellite picture look a lot worse than they are because you just saw the view from up downtown to the north. These are just some high, thin clouds. And they'll continue to to thin this morning with the sun getting higher above the horizon. But our storm chances will build throughout the afternoon hours. So obviously you see this big cluster of storms on radar well off to our west. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on probably from about sunset and then onward into the early overnight hours. But there is a warm front to our south that will bring isolated storm chances into this forecast as we head into the afternoon hours. But if you do have Memorial Day plans, we warm up quickly into the mid to upper 70s already by the noon hour. We're up to 84. Do not cancel your plans this afternoon. The storms initially are very, very spotty, but certainly if one of them does move through your neighborhood, you will have to take your plans indoors because some of them could be borderline strong to severe.
Todd, thank you. Traffic will be light today with many folks off for the Memorial Day holiday. But here's a look right now at I-465 and I-70 on the west side if you are headed to the airport. Lots of people expected to fly out today after the Indy 500 and the end of the long weekend. So just make sure you're keeping a close eye on any flight delays or cancellations. Breaking news from overnight. One person is recovering after being stabbed at a northeast side bar. Police say they were cleaning up a crash near 34th and Arlington when a fight started at the Point. The fight led to a victim being stabbed. He was taken to the hospital with minor injuries. We're told a large crowd inside the bar hindered police from responding how they needed to. No information on a suspect or motive has been released, but officers did say they found drugs on scene.
And in Broad Ripple, a large fight shut down parts of Broad Ripple Avenue and prompted a large police presence. Police at the scene tell us so many officers were called out around midnight because of the large crowds that were in the area. We know there were several fights and a couple of arrests as well. This morning, we're working to learn more specific details about what happened.
The greatest spectacle in racing living up to its name on Sunday, a crash involving multiple cars bringing things to a halt with just 20 laps to go. The red flag restart would set up a shootout between 2016 champ Alexander Rossi and pole sitter Simon Pagenaud. It would be a series of passes between Rossi and Pagenaud in the last 13 laps of the race that would keep fans on their feet. Pagenaud inching out Rossi by 0.02 of a second to cross the finish line and earn the honor of kissing the bricks. And President Trump sounded off about the win, saying he watched the race while on his trip to Japan. He congratulated his friend Roger Penske on the win and said he looks forward to hosting the entire racing team and Pagenaud at the White House.
After the race was over, thousands of fans left the track with lots of new memories, but they also left behind a lot of trash. And our Elena Martella is live at IMS this morning. Elena, we see a ton of trash behind you. What are you finding out there this morning?
Yeah, guys, so I'm here in the snake pit. Take a look at this. Look at all this mud, too, by the way. It must have been a really great party out here yesterday. So a lot of items. I'm going to walk you through it. So we have some beer items, beer cans, obviously. Looks like we have a stick right here. I don't know what this might have been. People fighting around. Who knows? Just a lot of coolers. Some of them actually have some drinks in them still, but I mean, I can't stress enough. Look how muddy it is. We've got some beads. We've got food wrappers, coolers, and I even saw a squirt gun a second ago. I can't find it right now. It's in here somewhere, but there are squirt guns. There's a ton of items. So what's kind of cool, though, is that all of these organizations, a bunch of nonprofit organizations, are going to help clean this area up today. And what's the good thing is that IMS will actually be giving donations to those organizations. So that's a pretty cool deal they have. It's win-win for everyone, but definitely going to take a lot of manpower out here today. Also good news, they have a trash pickup machine that actually comes through and helps pick up the trash as well, because by the looks of all of this out here, definitely going to be needed. So we'll of course let you know when those crews are out here. Right now it's pretty empty, but for now, I'll send things back to you guys in the studio.
Elena, you might need that umbrella behind you later today with the storms that Todd say is coming. It looks like it's still intact.
I probably will, since I broke mine last week.
All right, well, pick that one up behind you there. Thank you so much. The state is helping Indiana schools make big changes to increase your child's safety in the classroom. The focus ramped up immediately following the Noblesville West school shooting.
Now, a year later, the biggest change to schools center around mental health services throughout the state. This year, the state legislature added 35% more funds to school safety in the budget. School districts can use the Indiana Secured School Fund grants for mental health services for their students. They can also use the money to hire school resource officers and police officers. That wasn't allowed in the past. Representative Donna Shapley says more needs to be done to protect students and says state lawmakers want to hear your ideas.
We can always do better. We can always work harder. We can always, try to find the additional things that we can do to keep our kids safe. It hits home. I mean, this is in your backyard. And, you always think it's not going to happen here. Well, it can happen anywhere, these kinds of things, unfortunately.
Tonight on the news at 6, you'll hear from one school district that created new positions to address mental health. They're also starting their own police force. You'll also see how other schools could follow their lead.
RTV6 is getting answers for a Greenwood homeowner who is fed up with a cable line that runs right through her yard. Stephanie Coe says the orange cable snakes through her yard and extends hundreds of feet, connecting to another neighborhood. She says the cable has been exposed on the ground for several months now, and she's called several times to get information about it.
I called for 2 straight weeks trying to get somebody to come out here, and they just kept telling me they were going to get with the scheduling crew and somebody would call me back. Never heard back from anybody and haven't seen anyone.
After RTV6 reached out to Comcast about the situation, the company sent a crew to the house. A spokesperson says the cable is a temporary line related to an infrastructure improvement project. He says Comcast is working to fix it as quickly as possible, and we will continue to follow up until that happens. All right, it's time for our favorite forecast of the day, the dog walking forecast.
Yeah, and it's a good one throughout much of the day today. It's going to get a little warm later on this afternoon. Our featured dog this morning here is Spike. Thanks to Patrick for sending Spike in. His temperatures this morning are currently in the 60s. Eventually, we'll be climbing into the low to mid 80s later on this afternoon. Partly cloudy, so we'll give you green pause, but then there will be the chance of storms later on this afternoon. We have this big cluster off to our west. That'll arrive later in the evening hours, but there's also a warm front just down to our south, and as that lifts through, there could be a few spotty storms as we head into the afternoon hours. So as you plan out your Memorial Day plans, just know these storms are going to be pretty spotty, and they're basically from 3 o'clock onward throughout the day. So it's not a complete washout, but there is the chance a few of these storms could be strong to severe. That's why Storm Shield is a good app. It will alert you if some of these storms are coming. You pinpoint it to your location, and best of all, it's free to download in the App Store, and it also has an interactive radar on. I used it a lot yesterday at the track, so make sure you download that. I'll talk about the storm chances and the main threats as they move through coming up in just a few minutes.
Todd, thank you. Next on Good Morning Indiana, a man killed by a shark. The tragic story of a newly retired doctor and what may have led to the deadly attack.
Plus, cleanup continues in Oklahoma following devastating storms over the weekend. The latest on the severe weather outbreak that continues this morning in the Plains. It's 6:39. We'll be right back.
And that place is Cedar Point.
A horrific scene in Hawaii as a shark attack leaves a doctor dead.
Dr. Thomas Smiley had just retired this year. Police say Smiley was swimming 60 yards off the coast of Kaanapali State Park in Maui this past Saturday when the shark attacked. Witnesses were stunned, and investigators are now trying to figure out what type of shark went after him.
They pulled the man up. He looked unconscious when they transferred him to the other gurney, and we could see that they were trying to do CPR on him.
The bite radius and the tooth pattern, and sometimes a tooth fragment is left in the victim, like in the bone or something. And so a tooth fragment is the surest way, but also the bite radius, if it's a very big bite radius, then it rules out a lot of the other species of sharks, like a Galapagos shark. Tiger shark, of course, is the number one that comes to my mind for a fatal attack.
Friends say Maui was a regular vacation spot for Dr. Smiley. He and his wife had been there for 2 weeks prior to the attack.
Another racehorse was euthanized after getting injured at Santa Anita Park in California. The park says the horse named Cochise suffered a leg injury during his 6th race on Saturday. He's the 26th horse to be euthanized at the park since December. It's an unusually high number of horse deaths for a race season at the park. It sparked controversy and criticism from advocates for animals, and it's led to a re-examination of the sport in the state. At least 117 tornadoes have hit Oklahoma in the past week, including one that destroyed a mobile home park and a hotel in El Reno over the weekend.
As ABC's Kenneth Moten tells us, at least 6 people have died in the storms so far.
4 minutes of terror in Oklahoma.
Bodies everywhere, people everywhere, don't know dead or alive.
An EF3 tornado tearing through El Reno, a small town just outside of Oklahoma City.
My ex-wife called and said that the tornado just took her house out and that the kids were still inside.
145-mile-per-hour winds annihilated everything in their path. The second floor of this hotel sheared off, and a nearby trailer park decimated.
Yeah, we heard screaming and stuff, children and adults both.
She could hear them, but we couldn't get to them.
There's no way for us to get out, so our neighbor had to punch a hole in the wall for us to get out.
This boy was trapped in the rubble after his home was flipped by the powerful winds.
I was in a chair at the time, and I fell back in it, and when we got up, the whole house was overturned.
In the aftermath, at least 2 dead and dozens of others injured. Witnesses described the scene as rescuers combed through piles of debris in search of survivors.
A lot of destruction, a lot of chaos.
I saw
a lot of death.
Officials say people in the path of the powerful twister didn't have time to take cover. The warning issued just minutes before the tornado touched down.
It looked to be just like a regular Oklahoma thunderstorm, and all of a sudden it hit, and next thing you know, they were talking about debris in the air.
The entire state of Oklahoma is now in a state of emergency as another storm threatens to bring more tornadoes and destructive winds. Kenneth Moten, ABC News, New York.
Time now is 6:45, and Todd, we are going to see some storms here at home today, but nothing quite like what they are experiencing in the plains.
Yeah, plains, they just had one severe weather outbreak after the other really the past week. And we've had our fair share of storms. We had some severe thunderstorm warnings yesterday morning across northern portions of central Indiana. And there's the potential again today of some isolated warnings. And that's why we're in alert mode for you on this Memorial Day. I know many of you have off from work, so I want to make sure you're prepared as you may be going to barbecues, the pool, the lake, or maybe some of the Memorial Day celebrations here across the area. So most of today is dry, but warm temperatures will be the rule for just about everybody as we climb into the 80s. But it's really this afternoon and then into the evening hours that will run this severe threat. And there's 2 opportunities for severe weather. I'll explain more on that in just a second. But as you walk out the door this morning, there's a little bit of patchy fog in spots. It's not widespread, but certainly if you do take to the roadways here this morning and you encounter that, just slow down just a little bit. That should be burning off shortly. 64 degrees, nice and comfortable for you in downtown Indianapolis. And we have some 50s to the north in Lafayette as well as Tipton. 57 in Peru down to the south. Temperatures are currently in the 60s. So as you can get out and about on this Memorial Day, it's certainly going to have that summer-like feel. We're up to 79 degrees already by 1 p.m. This afternoon, and by 4 p.m. we're up to 84. That should be your high temperature for the day today. But it's also by 3, 4 o'clock that we start to bring in these isolated storm chances into the forecast. So no threat of any rainfall this morning. The high thin clouds continue to make their way through the area, and we have this big cluster of storms off to our west. This is the one that produced all that severe weather in Oklahoma and parts of Kansas, and that's something we'll have to keep an eye on for late tonight as we head into, say, sunset and beyond. So that's around 9 o'clock into the midnight hour. But before that, we have this warm front that's going to move through, and as that warm front moves through, it's going to eventually stall right across northern Indiana, and it's along that warm front that most of the storms will move through. So that's why the enhanced threat from the Storm Prediction Center is across northern Indiana, but it does include Lafayette over towards the Crawfordsville area, and then eventually to Muncie and into portions of Hartford City as well as Peru. It's a slight risk for Indianapolis and Richmond, just a marginal risk from Bloomington to Greensburg. And the reason for that is that front is going to be moving through northern Indiana during the peak heating of the day, and that's why that's going to start to trigger some isolated storms. 2 o'clock, we're still dry. Here comes that isolated storm threat through the late afternoon hours. You notice how spotty these storms are. And then here comes more of that cluster of storms that it's going to come through this evening. And it's this cluster of storms that will have the greatest potential for producing severe weather. Now, some of the models, and now this one's picking up on it too, wants to bring it through northern portions of central Indiana and then dive it south. So you do notice here Richmond and back towards Indianapolis, Indianapolis as we get closer to that sunset hour, bringing some storms in. So that's what I really want you to pay attention to is this evening compared to that isolated threat that we run into during the afternoon hours. What are the main threats? Wind and hail, probably the highest threats, but with that cluster of storms that comes through, can't rule out the chance of maybe an isolated tornado, and then obviously lightning will make every thunderstorm dangerous. Tomorrow, that warm front I've been talking about goes well to the north. It's a nice day tomorrow, mainly dry, with only a storm chance late in the day and a high temperature tomorrow all the way up to 87 degrees. We return to more seasonable temperatures in the 70s by Thursday and Friday.
All right, Todd, thank you. The owners of the giant Noah's Ark attraction in Kentucky are going to court over rain damage. The Ark Encounter is suing its insurance company over damage caused by heavy rains in 2017 and 2018. The company in northern Kentucky says the rain has led to about $1 million worth of damage on an access road, not to the Ark itself. The lawsuit claims the insurance company refused to pay for repairs to the road. The insurance company says its policy had an exclusion for correcting what it called design deficiencies or faulty workmanship.
A show-stopping moment before the U.S. women's soccer team game yesterday. A 96-year-old World War II veteran stealing the spotlight with his harmonica version of the national anthem. Pete Dupre, who is known as Harmonica Pete, has performed the anthem before, but this was his biggest stage yet. And by the looks of it, not even the size of the crowd could shake his nerves. Amazing. The big race went down to the wire next. The thrilling finish and who gets to pose with the Borg Warner Trophy on the Yard of Bricks later today.
Plus, an urgent warning about deadly rip currents. Coming up on Good Morning America as beach season gets underway, what you need to know before you and your family hit your vacation spot this summer. It's 6:50. We'll be right back.
By Window World. This is Good Morning Indiana, working for you.
Welcome back to Good Morning Indiana. Time now is 6:53. I'm Meredith Barrett.
And I'm Nicole Griffin. We've got the big headlines on this Memorial Day holiday, including the Indy 500 cleanup at IMS.
But first, meteorologist Todd Clausen is tracking a chance for storms later today. The good news is, though, they shouldn't impact too many plans.
Yeah, they're just spotty here initially throughout the afternoon hours, then they become a little more widespread this evening. Here's the view from downtown off towards the north, though, and you notice just some high, thin clouds making their way through the area this morning, with temperatures that are currently in the 50s and 60s. 63 in Muncie right now. 64 is the current temperature in Indianapolis. So this cluster of storms probably arrives after 7 o'clock, but there's a warm front that lifts to the north, and that warm front could trigger an isolated strong to severe storm this afternoon. But look at these temperatures warming into the 80s, about 84 your high temperature. But certainly as we get into the 4 to 8 o'clock hour, be weather aware with the potential of a few strong to severe storms.
Todd, thank you. Today, crews will continue to search for a Delphi boy who went missing while swimming in a creek last week. 4-year-old Owen Jones was last seen on Thursday before he was reportedly swept down in Deer Creek. Drones, boats, and sonar equipment have been used in the search, but officials say high water levels and muddy water have made conditions difficult.
Rescue crews in Indianapolis will also continue their efforts to find a missing man in the White River on the west side. A couple taking a selfie saw a man struggling in the fast-moving water who was eventually swept under by the current. Authorities say they have recovered his canoe and life jackets just south of the dam, but there is still no sign of that victim.
And the search for a missing man in southern Indiana lake will continue this morning. The man was swimming behind a boat anchored near the Allens Creek State Recreation Area on Lake Monroe when he went missing Sunday afternoon. Scuba teams and crews using sonar equipment are continuing to look for that man this morning. There will be ceremonies across Indiana honoring those who gave their lives for their country. Among today's Memorial Day services is one at the Hoosier Patriot Memorial Grounds of Washington Park East Cemetery. The city of Fishers will hold its ceremony at Liberty Plaza along the Central Green. And this afternoon, one of the longest running Memorial Day traditions happens at Crown Hill Cemetery.
The greatest spectacle in racing living up to its name on Sunday, a crash involving 5 cars bringing things to a halt. The red flag flag restart would set up a shootout between defending 500 champ Alexander Rossi and pole sitter Simon Pagenaud. After a series of passes, Pagenaud inching out Rossi by 0.02 of a second to cross the finish line and earn the honor of kissing the bricks. Elena.
Right now, it's the calm after the storm as crews are going to be out today working to clean up IMS after yesterday's festivities here at the Indy 500. So really, it's a win-win for all involved. So IMS gets the track cleaned up, and those organizations that do help to clean up and get their hands dirty, they get a donation from IMS for their charity. Years past, there have been church organizations, football and band groups, and more. There's also a trash pickup machine that helps to speed the process up. But aside from the obvious beer cans and food wrappers, there's bound to be some hidden gems out here in the Snake Pit.
Plenty of sunshine this Memorial Day with temperatures warming into the upper 70s, low 80s already by the noon hour. If you do have outdoor plans, just know that there will be the chance of a few spotty storms this afternoon. Some could be strong to severe, but again, they're very spotty in the afternoon hours. And then once we get to the late evening hours and into the overnight hours, another round of potentially severe weather.
Todd, thank you. We're back in 25 minutes and throughout Good Morning America with news, weather, and traffic updates.
As we leave you now, here's a live look at the Marine Corps War Memorial in Virginia. We hope everyone enjoys their Memorial Day holiday.